What if AI is the greatest thing since sliced bread? No, I really mean it. What if our little joyride of cringing at the third arms and the brainless melodies and the it's not X semicolon, it's Y is coming to an end? What if everyone starts calling every new invention the greatest thing since AI? To be clear, it's been something close to 3 years since my first video about AI, and in all that time of breathless innovation, my opinion of AI writing hasn't changed in a meaningful way. It's still just as stylistically flat, rhetorically inept, and literarily void as it was when I first encountered it. AI writing is categorically not the greatest thing since sliced bread, as far as I can tell. But what if?
That's a really interesting question, friend. I'm excited to see where you go with this. Let's dive right in.
Thanks, that's awfully supportive. I feel like visiting the Sea of Self-Doubt was good for us.
It sure was. It sure was.
So I thought it might be fun to think about the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, in terms of sliced bread. I mean, imagine a life before sliced bread, the horror. Back then, bread was only accessible to the privileged few who knew how to make it. It was gatekept by the guardians of the ancient secrets of mixing flour and water and letting it ferment and then making it hot enough to turn into a loaf. If you didn't know how to make your own bread, you were dependent on the town baker. And then, if you can even imagine life getting worse than it already was, you had to have a knife for cutting that big blob of bread into edible slices. Imagine paying for bread and still having to do more work to be able to eat it. I mean, for how many years did we accept such a backward state of affairs? Then along came some innovative industrialists who built machines that could slice bread, and before we knew it, we were in a 20th century wonderland of pre-sliced, pre-packaged, factory-baked bread. It was the new measure by which everything else would be idiomatically measured. Modern innovation democratized bread. And sure, it wiped out that old elitist industry of traditional baking, the only remnant of that old tyranny being mechanical engineers who have the last name Baker. And just think of it, with the advent of sliced bread, anyone could enjoy peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or ham and cheese sandwiches, or toast with no more effort than it took to pull 2 slices of perfected, standardized, optimized bread out of that big plastic sock. Freed from the burden of making and slicing bread, humanity was liberated to innovate even more. I'm not going to say that sliced bread is at the root of such things as nuclear proliferation, infinite scrollings, and private equity, but you could say they each had their turn being the greatest thing since sliced bread. Yes, a world without artisan bakers is such a beautiful and enlightened world. And we're on the cusp of a world that will be freed similarly from the plague of writers, musicians, and graphic designers. Only a Luddite would mourn such a loss of anti-democratic creative showboating. The genie's out of the bottle, you can't put it back, and the ultimate demise of creativity's gatekeepers is the greatest victory since sliced bread.
Wow, you sure do know how to spin a yarn. I'm enthralled. I don't have much to add, but it's just a pleasure to be here.
Well, I should say, it would be, if sliced bread really had eradicated all other kinds of bread. I'll stop being cute. I think the idea that AI is the end of writing or the end of art is beyond silly. Sure, we don't use horses on the highway, but believe me, there are still people whose entire livelihood is tied up in horses. You can still buy paint in a world of photography, and you don't have to walk far to find a candle for sale in a post-light bulb market. When I was in graduate school, I wasn't just learning to write like a poet, I was also learning to live on a poet's budget. And in practical terms, my grocery bill was the only flexible expense I had. So, in an effort to actually make it to the end of the month on my student stipend, I got to work optimizing my grocery lists. And I quickly learned that you can make just about anything cheaper than you can buy it. Not only that, but just between you and me, you can also make anything better than you can buy it. And bread was one of those things that I started making instead of buying. A sack of flour just went further than sliced bread. But it was also just better bread, and yes, absolutely, the trade-off is time. You don't have to measure, mix, and knead sliced bread. But as the years have gone on, and I've graduated from being a student to someone who is tolerably employed, I've only gone deeper into the realm of bread. A few years ago, I picked up a copy of Ken Forkish's Guide to Bread Making, fermented my own vat of sourdough culture, and I still make my own bread every few weeks. But why? If every innovation is measured against the greatness of sliced bread, what am I doing subjecting myself to a multi-day process a few times a month? Well, that's a wonderful question, and I will answer it. But while I do, I hope you'll consider your answer to this question. Why do you write? Why are you watching a show about writing or counting out syllables in sonnets when AI exists? Well, for me, there are a few reasons, and one is that I just like doing it. For better or worse, so much of my time is spent in my head, and so it's just nice to get my hands into the dough and do something real. There's a pleasure in mixing up a slurry of flour and warm water, in folding a blob of dough every 20 or 30 minutes, in shaping a boule, and of course it's hard to beat the aroma or the crickle crackling of the crust as it cools. The process is a pleasure, and sliced bread by its very nature is designed to eliminate that process. Getting bread and making bread just aren't the same activity. And if you, like me, are the kind of person who does enjoy making bread, well, switching to sliced bread just isn't a good trade. I started making bread because I kind of had to, but I've continued to make it because I want to. Also, I don't think it's controversial at all to say that the process is not the only thing that's better. The actual product is far and away superior as well. There's just no comparison between a slice of toast that I've made and some toasted sliced bread. So bully for me, you might be saying. It's all well and good to make your own bread, but the market for bread was forever changed. It's a hobby now, not a job. Well, first of all, nothing wrong with doing something for the love of the game. But secondly, I learned what I know from Ken Forkish's book, and from the sound of it, he's managed to build a whole career out of unsliced bread. And who hasn't watched one of those competition shows where someone overproved their bread on international television? And don't try to tell me that there aren't bakers running local shops or sharing their craft online or shipping off loaves through the mail all the time. Undeniably, sliced bread changed the bread market, but it obviously didn't kill it. Even 100 years later, people are still making and buying and watching competitions about unsliced bread. What a bunch of Luddites we all are. Turns out people like unsliced bread. People care about unsliced bread. Sure, maybe most people most of the time have chosen to embrace the convenience of sliced bread, but the production of bread at industrial scale didn't completely displace the craft of bread making. I mean, if anything, it just meant that people could start charging more for unsliced bread. So why are you writing when a data center can just drain a reservoir and churn out as much text as anyone's heart could ever desire almost instantly? Isn't writing once and for all finally doomed? Well, obviously not. For one, I don't think sliced bread would be the greatest thing if it were only actually sliced about 80% of the time. And then imagine what people would think if there were little advertisements slipped between every third slice. I bet you've never had sliced bread tell you that the word when had an O in it, but AI has confidently asserted as much to me before. But it's always and inevitably getting better, they tell us. So what if it is the greatest thing since sliced bread someday? Well, that's very bad news for someone like me who has built a whole life on teaching people how to write. That's like running a baking school at the time sliced bread first hit the market. Well, except baking school still exists. Absolutely, if AI ends up being the greatest thing since sliced bread, there are things that will change. I've said before on the show that it wouldn't surprise me if corporations decided to go all in on AI-written copy instead of the SEO-optimized boilerplate they're currently paying freelancers a pittance for. And while the basic competence of AI hasn't changed materially in 3 years, my classroom policy related to AI has changed. At first, I was doing the knee-jerk, no, never use it thing, but I've decided that it's a lot more productive to ask for transparency. I'll do better teaching if I know whether and where AI use happens than if I'm approaching every paper with suspicion. I think unsliced bread is more fun to make and better to eat. But I can understand that making your own bread isn't for everyone all the time, and it doesn't have to be. If you want to write your own stuff, I'm enthusiastically on board with helping you to do it as well as you can. If you're going to go the sliced bread route, well, I still feel like I have a responsibility to help you not to make a clown of yourself.
Clown? Who said anything about a clown? That's crazy. Clowns here? Not on my watch.
What do you mean, bud? I was just saying...
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just heard the word clown and I overreacted. I'm probably actually deeply afraid of clowns because they're just so cool and powerful. Yeah, that's what happened. You go right ahead. You're doing a great job. I mean, you always do, but, you know.
Well, thanks. At any rate, my experience with AI writing is made up mostly of generated attempts at classroom assignments and outrageously mark-missing emails from would-be sponsors. And from that vantage point, the treadline on AI's inevitable improvement is looking pretty flat. The ability to produce sliced bread at industrial scale is not the same as the ability to produce excellent bread. We've been making sliced bread the greatest thing for a century, but it kind of just remains what it's always been. Serviceable for a sandwich, but nothing to get too excited about. But you know, by some regulatory standards, sliced bread isn't even technically bread. Yeah, before we get stuck on a fruitless argument, let's not get too smug either. I don't think it's very interesting to try to debate whether AI output is or ever could be art. Take AI out of the equation, and I'm not sure we even know what art is. And besides, I'm not sure the greatest thing since sliced bread camp is too interested in artfulness. So accusing them of not producing art is like yelling at me for not making math videos. It just misses the point. Calling sliced bread cake is not going to persuade people to layer it up with buttercream instead of sliced turkey and lettuce, any more than calling AI not art is going to persuade people to stop asking it to write emails that they're scared to write or to generate pictures that they think are cool. But none of that has anything to do with you and your writing. I don't think we have any reason to worry about artificial beings taking the writing world by storm.
No, definitely not. For the foreseeable future, everyone is exactly who they say they are. You are writing with Andrew, I'm the irrepressible but endearing confortuum, and none of the comments below are from bots. It's good when there's no reason to be suspicious of anyone.
Exactly, because again, did sliced bread change the world? Absolutely. Did it change it for the better? I don't have an answer to that. But one thing is clear, there's still so much room in the world for people to bake, sell, and even make televised spectacle of unsliced bread. Big bread factories rolling into town didn't eradicate the craft and art of traditional bread. So really, I guess my approach to AI writing has evolved into a great big who cares? It exists, but we're not really in competition. 100 years of sliced bread hasn't stopped countless people from making their own, so a few years into AI is way too soon to declare the death of the creative arts. Just keep doing your thing. If you're only interested in writing to make a quick buck, well, maybe there's some room for concern. But if you're interested in writing because you find it enjoyable, meaningful, or fulfilling in any way, well then the Venn diagram of your writing and AI writing is just two separate circles. It's just not relevant.
But you remain as relevant as ever, friend. Maybe even more relevant.
That's actually pretty much the opposite of what I thought you'd say.
Yeah, well, like I said, I am who I've always been, and it's just an honor to be included. I can't wait to see what we talk about next week.
Now that's a good attitude. I guess we'll leave it there. Go enjoy some bread or cake or a handwritten essay or whatever you fancy, and we'll see you again for more unsliced artisan content next week. The building had been silent for a long time, so it was safe to assume my captor had abandoned me and moved on. That wasn't good. Once I broke free of my restraints, I started to look for a way out. Except, I quickly realized that there was no escape. At least, not unless I figured out how to grow a pair of gills on demand. There had to be something I could do.